Hey guys, sorry about yesterday. I have no excuse. Sorry about yesterday, but today I'm doing Storytime Sunday. Although it's not Sunday, I'm calling it Monday Makeup slash Storytime Sunday, episode 28. The story I'm going to tell today is called The Weekend. And what the weekend basically is, it starts off with Claudia Holmes. And Claudia is a very popular girl. She's a cheerleader. And what happens to Claudia? She is a very popular girl. Cheerleader, as I said before, and has lots of friends and is dating the football quarterback, typical story. But she's not very happy. In fact, she's miserable on the inside. And she's even contemplated taking her own life. Her parents are extremely successful, and um, her family's extremely successful, and there's a lot of pressure to conform. And her parents are kind of clueless. They have no idea that their daughter's having all these feelings and everything. Um, and there is this guy. He's a skater. His name is Sean Sperry. And Sean is like a ro- um a a skateboarder, and because they live near skateboard park, and in their high school, the skateboarders are considered kind of losers, kind of people that just hang around and smoke pot and really don't do anything much. So she's kind of a um, a popular girl fashionista, and he is a skateboarder. But also, along with being a skateboarder, he volunteers for the kids crisis line. He's a Christian, and he's got a really compassionate heart for kids who are in trouble like him. So he went through the training course, because at first he didn't know what he was going to do, but he saw this thing on the web for volunteers for something like Kids Help Phone to help other kids. And what happened was every year the class takes a senior trip, and they're both seniors, they're both 17 years old, but she usually gets good grades. But that weekend, the Monday before the test, her boyfriend broke up with her, and she wasn't able to focus to study for the test. So on the Monday, she bombed, and it was because of that she couldn't go on this class trip. And he couldn't go because he has such a compassionate heart, that there was nobody to work for the kids helpline. And so he decided, no big deal, I'll work it. And his boss was like, oh, thank you so much. So he ended up working for the kids helpline. And she was in total trouble. Like, she was, outwardly, she was everything that she should have been. Like an A student most of the time, and, popular boyfriend, and she was popular, and all the girls wanted to be like her. But in her room, she would cry and cry and cry and not know what was happening. And so when she when everybody left, because that was the funny thing, she had all these friends, but when they heard she wasn't coming, she wasn't allowed to come on the trip because she failed the test. Nobody Nobody said, let me stay back with you. Everybody said goodbye. And I should tell you one thing too. She was a virgin at 17, which wouldn't be such a big deal, but being a popular girl and being what she was, she kept getting all this pressure from her friends, to sleep with her boyfriend and to just go there because it's what she was expected to do. And they're like, why are you holding on to your virginity? It's just sex. And that's what happened. So she was left with, just by herself while her friends went on this trip. And he was working at the kids' helpline. And she was so lonely and so just despaired of everything. What happened was, um, her parents, right before that, told her that they were getting a divorce. So her boyfriend broke up with her, her, her parents were divorcing, and all of that was happening. And when all that was happening, the pressure became just too much, and she didn't know what to do. Um, and she looked on the internet. She happened to be on social media and saw an advertisement for, the teen helpline, and she, said, "Why not?" And then so she called, and she got, um, the, the guy from her school that was a skateboarder. So he went through the usual protocol, like, this is anonymous. I don't need to know your name. What seems to be the trouble? Whatever. But as they started talking, because the rules of the thing were it was anonymous and you didn't need to know the person's name or whatever. They would just tell you what's going on, and they in their lives, and you would try and talk them through it. And if they needed other help that you couldn't give, there was a list of counselors, whatever, that you would pass them on to. So as these two started to talk, um, she began to say, I feel so much pressure at school. I really don't know what's going on with my parents. She shared about her parents and her struggles at school and her boyfriend breaking up with her because he wouldn't have sex with she wouldn't have sex with him, and just feeling just like she was not um doing well, just everything. And as she began to talk to this stranger on the phone, she began to cry, and tears just filled her eyes, and she she just began to just pour out her heart to this stranger. And he just was there and let her talk. And and he thought he recognized her voice, but he wasn't allowed to say anything because it breaks the rules of confidentiality that if you recognize the person, you're not supposed to say anything. So they talked, and he was so encouraging. He's like, we all go through stuff like this, and um, we we all have things like this that we need to overcome, especially when you're a teenager with our friends. And he was a Christian, and although he wasn't supposed to reveal who he was or whatever, all he said was, "I'm a skateboarder." And sometimes being a skateboarder, you have to uphold a certain image. And sometimes that image is very crushing. Just like your image as as a popular girl in school, like you were telling me. And she was saying, he said to her, "It will be okay." And he just talked to her and encouraged her. And after about an hour on the phone, she felt so much better just by hearing this guy's voice, and just by knowing that someone was there and knowing that someone understood her. And she felt like, although she didn't know this guy's name, that he understood her and that she wasn't alone. And because the thing about it was, although she was popular and people knew her, she felt alone, and she felt like she had to uphold this image that was so unrealistic, and it was crushing her, and she had no one to turn to, not really to talk about what she was going through. And this person was so understanding and so sympathetic and didn't judge her. She wondered who he was, although she didn't ask. She couldn't ask. Um, and what happened was when they hung up the phone, she kept thinking about, I wonder who he was. I wonder what school he goes to. I wonder, what's going on. I wonder what's going on in his life. He seemed to really relate to me, although I'm not a skateboarder. I'm more of a cheerleader and stuff like that. He seemed to really relate to me and give me some really comforting advice. And she just really, something about him stuck with her. And Same thing with him too. Of course, that night he took other calls from other teens, but in taking those other calls from those other people, he couldn't stop thinking about her and what she was going through. For some reason, um, it it just really, her call just stuck to him. Her desperation and her um, utter hopelessness, just because of the pressure that was on her and what was going on at her school. Um, she was really just feeling hopeless. And being a Christian that night, he's not supposed to take anything home with him. He's supposed to leave it all there, but all night he was thinking about her, and being a Christian that he was, he prayed for her. He prayed, God, let me see her again. So the next day, he was, it was his day off from the teen help, something like teen help phone. It was his day off from that. It was a Sunday. He was skateboarding, and he was practicing running along. He was practicing skateboarding, his jumps and everything. And she was walking by, just walking by, and she saw this skateboarder just jump into the air and just really, um, just really do some fantastic, fantastic skateboarding tricks. And and she was like, wow, because she never paid attention to the skateboarders, because her and her friends were too busy focused on themselves, too busy focused on fashion, too busy focused on actually what they were doing to really um, be into the skateboarding that was going on. They thought it was some stupid kind of hobby that they wouldn't be caught dead doing. But like, him doing all those skateboarding tricks were like really just awesome. And she just sat and watched him do all those skateboarding flips. And when he was done, she said, "Oh my gosh, that is so great." And she ran over to him. She's like, "That was amazing. That was so cool." And he's like, "Thanks." And she's like, "Wait a second, do I know you?" And he's like, "Yeah, I think we go to the same school." She's like, "Oh yeah, that's right, but I think I know you from somewhere else too. Your voice sounds familiar." He's like, "Yours does too." She's like, "Wait, do you work at uh, Teen Phone?" And he's like, I'm sorry, I can't tell you that. She's like, "Come on." He's like, "Sorry, I can't tell you that. That's confidential. We're not really supposed to say whether we work there or not." "You do work there, because if you didn't, you would just say no." And he's like, he's like, "You got me. But if you come in contact with my boss, I didn't say anything." She's like, "Well, you didn't say anything. I said something." He's like, "That's true." She's like, "Well," he's like, she's like, "You're the one I spoke to yesterday." He's like, oh yeah, you called yesterday. He's like, how are you doing? And she's like, well, I'm doing better a bit. It still kind of hurts like that all this stuff is happening with my parents' divorce and my boyfriend broken up with me and me not being able to go on the class trip. He's like, it must hurt. Um, he's like, she's like, hey, why didn't you go on the senior trip? He's like, well, my boss needed someone to work. And I said yes, because I believe that helping people is so important. He's like, she's like, I wish I was like you. I I've helped myself a lot and not others. He's like, it's not too late to start. And he's like, hey, they're not coming back till Tuesday. It was a Saturday. It was a Saturday. He's like, hey, they're not. He's like, they're not coming. He's like, the class is not coming back until for 2 days. Want to spend the weekend together? I have nothing to do. I'm not working for the rest of the weekend, and you're you're not working for the rest of the. Are you doing anything for the rest of the weekend? She's like, no, not really. I'm stuck here doing nothing. He's like, want to hang out? And she's like, sure. So they start walking. They sit down in parks, and they sit down in the park, and when they sit down, they start swinging, and then they ask each other about their um, childhoods and what's happening. And he tells her that his childhood was very rough. His parents both were abusive, and he was just very lonely as a child. And then when he became a teenager, um, he got into selling drugs, not doing them, but selling them to an older kid, and he almost and there was a missionary who saw him, um, and there were like this missionary said, "Hey kid," and he handed him a tract about Jesus and the love of Jesus. Now needing to make money and doing all this because his parents were no good. Um, he kind of threw the piece of paper away, and every day that this missionary saw him, he would give him the same piece of paper and say, Jesus loves you, kid, remember that. And like, he would throw it away. And then one day, um, an undercover cop dressed as someone wanting to buy drugs drove up to the car, and he was almost arrested. But what happened was he was arrested, and what happened was when he went for his court date, they were about to throw him in youth detention, but um, the guy who saw him every day on the street said, "I will take full charge of him, Your Honor. I run a youth shelter, and I also do some skateboarding camp. And he can work with me, and I'll teach him how to skateboard. All he needs is direction, Your Honor." So the judge put him in with this evangelist guy, and this guy taught him how to skateboard, and not only how to skateboard, but to be the kind of person that that would love God and love people, and just be a friend to people. This evangelist really turned his life around. And as she listened to his story, she was so amazed, and they walked and they talked, and through the day or through the weekend, they got to know each other very well, and they would stop at different places and talk, and he shared his faith with her, how God sent his son Jesus to die on the cross for her sins, and it doesn't matter what she did, but all that matters is that God loves her. And she said, "Can God really love me after what I've done? I've treated people so badly." And because what happened, she told her story. She said that her parents were rich, and her father was um, a photographer, a world-renowned photographer, and her mother was a model, and they met on site on a shoot, and they had her, and then they got married. But they're so self-absorbed, they didn't know how to raise a child, so they left her with nannies when they went to Paris or Milan or other parts of Europe, Canada, the US. They traveled all around the world and left their daughter, and only bought her gifts. And it was just a very lonely childhood. And she learned that her parents didn't love her, and the only thing that people loved about her was her money. So she learned that money would buy her friends. So she would buy her friends all this stuff, and they would love her because she would buy them all this stuff. And now she's just feeling empty. And she learned that her teachers liked her if she would get good grades. So she just did that and studied all night, and gave her friends stuff and bought them stuff, and actually just trying to buy their love. Because she said, with her parents too, her parents tried to buy her love. So that's all she knew to get love. Anyway, he said to her, "But with God, you don't have to do that. With God, He loves you regardless. You don't have to pay any price. In fact, He paid the ultimate price. He bought your life with his. He bought you, and he took her to Timothy. He said that you were bought with a price. And the next day, when they were talking, she gave her life to Christ with tears in her eyes and everything. And from that day forward, her life was totally different. She started being involved in her youth group. She started really just being so changed by the love of God. And her friends, the ones that she felt was so important, started to see a change in her, and some of them loved it and some of them didn't like it. And she started together, her and the skateboarder started a Bible study in their school. And then later, when they graduated and were in college, they kind of felt feelings changing from friendship to a more romantic, emotional connection. And then one day, shortly after college graduation, they kissed on the lips, and then they started dating because they felt that God was calling them together. So, and then 2 years after they started dating, they got married and started a ministry for skateboarders and people that really didn't have anywhere else to go, and just started sharing the love of God with people. If you're out there today thinking that what you buy and what you have means anything, I'm here to tell you through this story that it doesn't. The only life that means anything is a life in Christ. And you would say, Rachel, how do I get this life? Well, it's easy. All you have to say in your own words is, God, I need you. God, I receive your life. God, I believe that you exist. The Bible says if you believe in your heart and confess with your mouth and believe in your heart that Jesus is Lord, you will be saved. That's the only thing that you have to do. Confess and believe, and you will be saved. And there is life waiting for you. There's life past the things you have. There is life past the things you buy. That's not life, that's emptiness. And He comes to give you life and life more abundantly. So receive this abundant life today. And join me next week, Sunday, for Storytime Sunday. Take care. Bye. I am fearfully and wonderfully made, and to give me life is the reason you came. I can finally look at myself and be truly amazed, amazed, amazed.